Welcome to the Hey Chaplain podcast. My name is Jared Altic, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. This is a special bonus episode of Hey Chaplain, and I'm going to replay an episode of another podcast, the Blue Grit Radio podcast by Eric Tung. Eric gave me special permission to replay this episode from just a few months ago, and I'm going to do that for a few reasons. First of all, the work that Eric Tung is doing is fantastic, and I really want you to be aware of Blue Grit Radio, and I think that it's a nice complement to Hey Chaplain. It's a little bit different kind of police officer wellness podcast. It has its own unique voice, and I really think that it's worth your time. My second reason is that not only am I on the podcast, but also Matt Domyancic, who you know from several episodes of Hey Chaplain. Matt and I both are being interviewed, and I love to give you the opportunity to hear from Matt Domyancic. My third reason is also because of Matt. I love to censor when Matt swears on the podcast, and so here's at least a couple opportunities for me to bleep him out, and I just find that amusing. So without any further ado, here's a recent episode of Blue Grit Radio. It is trimmed down for content and time, and so it just is a little bit shorter than the original version, but I encourage you to go over and find Blue Grit Radio online, anywhere that you get your podcasts. Find that and start listening to Eric's content. He is prolifically putting out content, and I want you to hear what he has to say. Here's Eric Tung, Matt Domyancic, and me, Jared Altic.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm excited to feature this chaplain-focused episode. And for those that are like, well, I'm not a chaplain, or, I don't really work with chaplains, it's really to bring in this multi-pronged conversation, because chaplains, as they work alongside first responders and police, have a very unique perspective. So we're going to talk about from two expert chaplains. We're going to talk about the chaplaincy, what makes programs effective. We're going to talk about what cops want from chaplains for those that do work alongside. And I've heard absolutely fantastic stories I've seen up front, and personally, fantastic chaplaincy partnerships with first responders and police. And I've also heard kind of the horror stories of, chaplains just not being effective for, let's say, a policing mission and or for police personnel or fire personnel. And then we're also just kind of going to riff and integrate some insights from both of these veteran chaplains and, many other hats they both wear. But just want to welcome Jared and Matt. So returning guest, Matt Domyancic. We'll start with you. Could you please give yourself a little intro? And I'm going to confine you to a couple minutes because your resume could probably span 45 an hour, maybe more.
It'll take the whole hour to talk about Matt.
Former police officer, patrol, SWAT, peer support, police academy instructor, former strength conditioning coach, Yale, Georgetown, strength coach and sports psych at a private facility in LA for NFL Combine, other elite athletes. And for many years, very, very active chaplain in Los Angeles with Torrance PD, South Central Los Angeles, LA Sheriff's Department, and helping psychologists that are contracted with many other police and fire agencies, integrating chaplaincy with wellness and peer support. So proactive cold plunge, sauna, breath work, float tank. And also, I'm a little different that I used to ride all the time, graveyard shifts behind the cage, and do a lot of lifting and shooting and taking cops on retreats and training with them to build relationships proactively.
Love it. Thank you, Matt. And Jared, I'm very fortunate to have been able to meet you and hop on your podcast relatively recently, Hey Chaplain, right? The Hey Chaplain podcast. And I will just throw out before I turn it over to you for your introduction. As I was kind of conceiving this idea, I was like, what two chaplains would be really cool to offer this really grounded but holistic perspective, this really practical perspective, but very different dudes. And it turns out you guys know each other super well. So maybe it's just meant to be. Pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I went out to California to see Matt for his birthday. And so yeah, we do know each other well. Yeah. My name is Jared Altic. I'm a chaplain in Kansas City, and I'm the outsider. I am not prior law enforcement. I'm not prior military. I do not have that background at all. I am a complete, coming from a completely different point of view. But I have been a minister in a church for 30 years. And so I have a lot of experience counseling people. I've had cops and firefighters in my church that entire time and military families. And so I've learned a lot about what those families need and what those individuals need and how their jobs are different than anybody else's. And I've developed a great respect for that. And so eventually it led to me becoming a police chaplain. And as a police chaplain, I am embedded in the patrol divisions. And so even though I'm a volunteer, I do 150 to 180 roll calls every year. I'm out in the car doing ride-alongs. I'm involved. I recognize my officers. In our department's probably about 350 sworn, but my patrol officers, I recognize them out of uniform when I see them in the grocery store. And they know me by name and I know them by name. And I am developing this rapport so that when they or their families need some kind of help or assistance or encouragement, I'm one of the tools in the toolbox. I'm somebody who I know what it's like to do their job because I've been with them while they've done it. I know their supervisors. I know their situation. And I've gone out of my way. I'm kind of autodidactic. I teach myself stuff. And so I have jumped in with both feet to learn everything I can about police officers. And I'm committed. I've been here 10 years. I hope I'm here another 20 years. My big, hairy, audacious goal is that I have officers that I teach at the police academy. I teach things like death notifications and that sort of stuff. I'll have officers that I teach that they'll go through a 25-year career, and I will have been their patrol chaplain the entire career. That's my big goal.
It's fantastic. I mean, you think about resource and leadership and mentorship, and this is literally a conversation I was having with a buddy yesterday. And we were talking about a local teacher and this like program at the high school. And he was like, dude, I had that teacher, right? Like through another circle. And you think about these people that really stand out in your lives and like, why not be that guiding mentor coach, which absolutely the chaplaincy can be. And I love how we're just jumping into it because even in your introduction, you hit on a lot of things that highlight what come to my mind and I know come to Matt's mind because we've talked about this before, but like what makes an effective program? And you said a lot of things. You said the embedded nature. And in my head, I was like, okay, I want him to explain that. And you did. You talk about how you were embedded in the patrol division, all the ride-alongs. You know your people. They know you. And then that just goes with any team is building trust through time, experience, connection. I love that. Thank you, Jared. Matt, I'm going to turn it to you to keep going on that.
So, I mean, well, first of all, let's let everybody know being a chaplain is not about pushing religiosity, churchianity, or Bible thumping. Technically, it's a ministry of presence. Lemon versus Kurtzman Supreme Court case. A lot of chaplains and psychologists involved with peer support above chaplains do not understand this. So even as a former cop, I've been introduced as a chaplain during a briefing or roll call, and people haul ass out of there like it's an active shooter. And say in Torrance, for instance, that happened. But then another sergeant on another briefing goes, "Hey, I know Matt. We did Krav Maga and Muay Thai together 10 years ago. He's a former SWAT guy, strength coach, football player." People turn around and start dropping F-bombs. "Hey, man, where'd you work? What's going on?" But there's this stereotype of whatever the worst hypocritical religiosity and churchianity person you've met or seen on TV is what chaplaincy is about. And it's not. It's ecumenical, which is, if you're a Christian, it's about what you have in common with all Christians. It's interfaith. It's us holding space. Technically, it should be us as a chaplain holding space for you where you are. Even if you're agnostic, an atheist, a Muslim, a Sikh, a Hindu, or spiritual but not religious. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what it's about. And then there's often community chaplains, not patrol chaplains, that love wearing me and Jared joke about this, chaplain in huge letters across their chest, their hat. They want to wear a dorky uniform. They'll fight over who gets to pray at a police event. And they want to bring donuts and hang out with the chief or the sheriff or command staff. So all the patrol people are like, there's this elderly, out of shape person that brings donuts only when they come to pray at an event or after a critical incident. And then they want to pray in their religiosity language or vocabulary. And they make me uncomfortable. And they're not doing anything for me except every once in a while, maybe they'll respond to the community. Versus a patrol chaplain is dedicated to serving the cops and or the firefighters. And the only way you can do that is proactively, not reactively, not just be part of the Sism Mitchell model. I show up afterwards, after a shooting. You have no idea who I am. Plus, you have all these religious stereotypes. And all it takes is one chaplain to wear the dorky uniform or the big chaplain badges and then talk in a way that makes, say, if I'm a Baptist pastor and you're an Episcopal and I come in swinging with Baptist language, like you're going to be like, dude, this is awkward and weird, even though we're both Christian. And then you're going to tell all your buddies, like, I don't want to deal with this guy. So there's patrol chaplains, community chaplains, proactive versus reactive. And then how many people are actually trained in chaplaincy or something called spiritual direction? And that's where it's not about me and my theology. It's about you and wherever you are with your values in life, whether you're religious or not. And I'll stop there in case Jared wants to add anything or you want to ask a question.
Yeah, we'll go to Jared.
Yeah, let me elaborate on the reactive versus proactive. It's good to have a chaplain who can do both. It's wonderful to be able to have an angry crowd at the yellow tape and to be able to grab a chaplain who is not wearing a full tactical uniform and is a civilian and is embedded in the community to help de-escalate things, to be a liaison even between the community and the department. There are lots of ways to use a chaplain on a scene, to do death notifications, to interact with the public, do crisis counseling in a moment, just to get the person from the actual scene, if they're the victim of a crime or the family member of the victim of a crime, to get them from the scene to their long-term help. Lots of chaplains are trained counselors, and it's great to use them in the community. But what gets neglected and what really Matt's specialty and my specialty is the other thing. The one is reactive. We want to see proactive, embedded chaplains who are engaged with their first responders in a sheriff's office, a fire department, police department. We want these guys building, men and women, building rapport with those officers so that they have that connection and that there's one more way to get that officer to a healthier place with his physical health, mental health, spiritual health. We want the whole person to be moved into a healthier place so this job doesn't wear them down and destroy them. And the problem is a lot of our first responders, they go to maybe the family doctor and they start talking about, I worked an accident and, the person's head was completely smashed flat and there's blood and brains everywhere. They hear that kind of thing and the doctor's not prepared and reacts badly. And then the first responder learns, okay, I can't share what I've seen with anybody. And so we need to put people who understand trauma and trauma-informed care and maybe have been there and they've seen the stuff and they've smelt the stuff themselves. We need to put those helpers with our officers, and a chaplain is well-positioned to do that. I've done funerals for 30 years, and I've worked homicide scenes and accident scenes. I've been on dead baby calls. I've done that. I've smelled it. I just had a decomp call the other day. Some poor guy died in front of a space heater, and no one found him for a week. If you've not smelt that, you don't know. But I have, and my officers have, and we understand that we've had this shared experience. And in that shared experience, we have camaraderie, we have support for one another, and that kind of support can be really hard to find. That has to be worked on proactively. You have to get in there, and a lot of counselors, a lot of clinicians, they don't have time. They're working in their office. They don't have time to get out and be with our officers like some chaplains can. And so there's a special niche where a chaplain can fill that role and be effective and provide a type of support that some officers would want. I also want to comment, Matt said that, it's not like an active shooter. You get introduced as a chaplain like, religious person. Most of my cops would Leatherface. an active shooter than deal with a religious person. Okay. A lot of them are 25 years old. They're not going to church right now. Maybe they did in the past. Maybe they didn't, but they do not want to get hit over the head with a Bible. A chaplain that doesn't understand that kind of sensitivity will destroy their reputation with those officers. You can go to a police station and you can stand up on a chair and preach the gospel one time, and then you will lose all your privileges. You will lose all the respect. They won't trust you anymore, because if anybody can see an ulterior motive coming from a mile away, it's a cop. Okay, they're used to people lying to them. They're naturally cynical. They will see your ulterior motive. You're just there to try to promote your religion or to try to get people to go to your church. They will sniff that out from 1,000 miles away. They will never trust you, and they might not trust any other chaplain for a long time. So if there's a chaplain listening to this, I just asked, hey, be careful before you go and make a mistake that's going to cost all of us.
Yeah. You've both said a lot, and I would encourage the listeners to go back, because we came out, proverbial guns a-blazing, because you all have a lot of opinions. But what I like about both approaches is that, although some people might get uncomfortable with some things they heard, we're like, well, that's not what I see in chaplaincy, right? That's not what I think. It's like the thing that I hear in this commonality is what is the goal, and what I hear in both respects is the goal is support. The goal is help and health. The goal is openness and developing trust. And so to break down a little bit of that, if we don't know what the goal is, then we don't know what we're doing anyway, right? That's the start. And then you have some of the how do you achieve health and connection and trust is you have to embed, you have to invest. You don't just get to show up. And so although people may get defensive just because it's human nature, this is not a dog on clinicians that don't have the schedule or the resource or the bandwidth or the design to be embedded, or chaplains that maybe don't, right? And I like how, Jared, you kind of broke up a difference between those that are embedded and those that are in the community. And I also like how you highlighted there's an extreme value of those that are in the community, right? It's not us, them. This is, I can liaise with the community. They know me, they trust me, and I'm trying to bring this commonality, because I've seen scenes like that where the crowd, the community, they're at odds with those inside the yellow tape, and they're on the outside of the yellow tape. And it's because there's distrust. There's a lack of investment in relationships. So knowing what the goal is, we can assess like what is the best response. And maybe for larger agencies and regions, you find a way to develop both. And there are some people that are really good in one role and some people that are really good in the other, and some that are a little bit better as hybrids. But yeah, rather than just shoot your shot in all directions, like a spray, like let's identify what is the goal, what are we trying to address here?
I could throw out a couple things, and I also want to share a story because it came up when you were talking, is that South LA, the sheriff's department, they thought I was an undercover federal agent because there are not chaplains or psychologists riding along. So I was told, hey, their midnight graveyard shift, which is called earlies, is not the rookies and the seniors that don't want to work, which it was traditionally in some of the police departments. I was a cop. It's the senior guys that are gun grabbing. They take over 500 guns a year out of a station that has about 6 cars on the road per shift. So I think they're in the top 10 or 15 police departments, just their station, taking guns, illegal guns out of cars. So they told me ride the early shift. It's 2-man cars, so I had to ride behind the cage, and I did it every Friday, Saturday night for a couple years. And at first, they're like, how much you get paid? I don't. Who are you? Ex-cop, strength coach. They're like, bullshit. Like this guy's an undercover fed for all the shootings we get in because nobody cares about us. And they also said, how come you're not trying to convert us? How come you're not having Bible studies? And the job is a ministry of presence. It's to be a good listener. And if you study post-traumatic growth and other orientations of psychology, as well as contemplative spirituality, it is incredibly healing to share your story with somebody that can see, understand you, not judge you, and not try to fix you or psychopathologize you. To hold sacred space for somebody to get something off their chest. So that's a big component, I think, is to build the relationship to the point where they share good wins in their life. But then when the marital problems come or the call that really bothers them, they have enough trust to be able to get it off their chest, and you hold and listen well. And that takes training. And that's where a lot of the real chaplain, CPE, clinical pastoral education, or spiritual direction training takes, or it takes 20 or 30 years of being a very mature pastor like Jared is. So again, it's not about the chaplain's theology or religiosity. It's about them being grounded and holding space to be a good listener after they've developed relationships with these officers proactively.
Simplify it even more and just say that a good chaplain has to love the officers. And officers are not always very lovable. In fact, I've found that most police officers,
Yeah.
most police officers will push you away to see if you can be pushed away. And so a chaplain walks into the police station for the first time, maybe the first 10 times, and some officers will ratchet up the cursing and they'll drop an F-bomb. They'll paint the walls with filth to try to scare the chaplain away. And that's, like I said, it's an attempt to push you away to see if you can be pushed away. Because frankly, most people can. A lot of people don't want to invest very much to get to know police officers, to really understand them. They'll say back the blue, and every Christmas they'll donate a tub of popcorn to the local patrol station, and you know they'll make great efforts that look nice, but they're not very deep. And so are you going to come back again and again and again and again and be there during the mundane and the boring as well as the terrifying? Are you willing to spend time with those frontline officers, not just the commanders? Because it's tough. Most chaplains, I started this when I was in my 40s. I'm in my late 40s now. And the people my age are all captains and majors. And so if I just gravitate toward the people my age, I'm talking to the commanders. But I can't do that. And so if I'm going to stay out and spend time with those 25-year-olds, those 30-year-olds, those 35-year-olds, if I'm going to spend time with them, that's going to take a deliberate effort on my part to say they are valuable. They deserve to be sympathized with. They deserve to be heard. It's worth spending time. My time with them, if I spend 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours in the car with them, that is just as valuable as getting an audience with the police chief. And you can only do that if you deliberately decide that you love them. Even if you don't like them, you're going to choose to love them. If you choose to love them, then you're not going to force yourself on them. You're not going to talk at them. You're going to be interested in knowing what they know and why they feel the way they feel. And you're going to engage them at that level. And very few people do that. And so a chaplain that can learn to love their officers, I don't know how much training they really need. If you love, you'll make better decisions than if you're being selfish and self-promoting. And Matt and I have both been burned by chaplains who do want to get the chaplain badge and the jacket that says chaplain across the back, which I wear, by the way. But that's all they want, because they just want that as a way to get breakfast with the mayor. And they want to feel important.
Yeah.
And they want to be on stage to give the invocation at the academy graduation. There's nothing wrong with those things, but wanting those things will get in the way of loving your police officers. That's how I define ministry.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to take a moment to break down some of that, because when we started the episode, I wanted to get at what cops need to hear from your insights, and being there, being at all the death notifications and seeing all the hard calls. Because in my own reflections, I've been to many difficult calls, up front and personal. I've been to other where I'm kind of on the periphery, right? I'm not seeing the kid maybe, but I'm interacting with the mom. And that's really tough too. And I've been the supervisor where I'm trying to check in with the officers. So I'm not really in the mix, but I'm attached to the mix. And then my, continuing circles outwards where you're still concerned, but you're not in it. But hats off to chaplains that are in there, because you're going to all these things. It's a medical, it was expected. And I almost said it's just, that's someone's family member. That's someone's life, and it's hard. Right. And so I've recognized, even as a young cop, to be like, whew, thank you, chaplain, for showing up, because I don't have to stay here for the next couple hours, right? Like, I did my part, but I'm going to go to other calls, and I would prefer to do that, to be honest. So one is like integrating how you've both integrated so many things that I hope that the listeners, whether they're a chief or whether they're a rookie, they're hearing these insights and helping them navigate their own process through this job and interacting with all these things. The other thing I really want to focus in on is how you described, this care and this love. Like, that's what ministry is to you. And I think that goes back to the openness, right? Like, I think through my whole life, when the people even that I did not agree with, or I just didn't see their point of view, let's call it politics, let's call it religion, let's call it whatever, strong beliefs. Like, I was always comfortable around those, even though they felt so different to me, when I felt like it came from a place of love and care, right? We all know what it feels like to be preached at, whether it's politics or whether it's nutrition or, like whatever workout modality, that gets kind of cultish, kind of religious too, right? And polarizing. And I know that those that are listening in frequently, that's been one of my biggest themes, is like, how do we move away from polarization? How do we come to integration? Like, same team, right? Whether you're a chaplain, a rookie, a firefighter, a community member, same team. We all want the same thing. And what is that? That is the wellness of our community. That is the wellness of every individual and group. We want to be better. We want to be safer. We want to be whole. So I love the focusing on that. And then also, I'll just take a moment. It really sat with me when you're talking about how we can try to push others away. And when you said that, I had this visceral remembering of being a younger, cynical cop where I did not swear that much. And I started swearing a lot at work because it felt normal and cool. But then I started probably overcompensating and injecting it into my non-cop circles, because I'm like, well, I've changed now. This is how I am. So do you still love me? I didn't think it then, but I think that's what was going through my gut and my, a little bit of my soul. And I like the discussion there, because I really want us all listening in and participating with these types of discussions to challenge ourselves. Because when I say, yeah, cops aren't lovable too, some people might take that a certain way because I'm admin. No, I'm saying this is how we treat each other, whether you're a 5-year cop or whether you're a 30-year veteran retiree, whether you're thinking about yourself because of what you feel you've been exposed to in the job, and not think yourself that lovable, Matt.
Well, this is all deep stuff, and this is part of my presentation, some of the ones that you're looking through. We cannot give away that which we do not possess for ourselves, and that's self-love and self-care. And this ties into spirituality and some other quotes I often use. Heard this from Dave Grossman in the 90s. Pain shared is pain divided. Joy shared is joy multiplied. Richard Rohr, who you've been reading. Pain that is not transformed is transmitted. Pain that is not transformed is transmitted. And if you don't heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people that did not cut you, which often is your family. So all of this shit you see at work, if you don't have enough self-love to feel your feelings, as gay as that may sound to a cop, you will unconsciously stuff and self-medicate with the drinking and the chewing and the junk food and the gambling and the toys and the more overtime. And then your quote shadow, this unconscious stuff that you keep burying, you keep putting the skeletons in the closet, will blow up in your face at some point. That's why I have all these mental health statistics, shorter lifespans, divorce, alcoholism. So it really does come down to love. And we don't have the time for it theologically, but that's where a lot of religious people miss it. Like, those that know God know love. If you don't know love, you don't know God. It is not what you know intellectually. It is not what you preach or tell people what your beliefs are. It's how you're living it out. And if you can have a chaplain with the life experience or a good friend, even if they're not on peer support, or the right therapist or the right mentor or elder that has done their own work and authentically loves themselves and is comfortable with themselves, if you can self-regulate, then you can help other people co-regulate. And it really is love. So I'm glad Jared stepped in with all my analytical stuff.
Yeah. No, thank you, Matt. For the listeners that are intrigued about the scientific approach, to where we intersect this intuitive with the tangible data metrics, we have an episode with Matt that I'll pull up and I'll share later, or it'll be in the show notes. But I want to go to Jared because you're both hitting on all these different factors, and I know that people listening in will take from it based on their perspective. How do we stay present? How do we stay in this vein of love and care, Jared, in all the hard times? And maybe that even goes to your own reflections on what's helped you stay positive and grounded, and what you've seen has helped a lot of officers that you work alongside and with for all these years.
Part of the answer lies in who is doing the helping to start with. Another bone of contention that you hear a lot with both Matt and me when we talk about other helpers are helpers who are just not ready to be helpers yet. Unfortunately, when you talk about chaplains, clinicians, other helpers, there is a type of helper who, the story I like to use is that they were out swimming at the beach and started drowning because they were in water they were not prepared for, and it's outside of their ability to keep themselves afloat. So the lifeguard swims out and rescues them, drags them to shore, resuscitates them. They sputter and spit the water out and say, "I want to be a lifeguard." Well, that's fine, but you should learn to swim first. Okay. And so we have a lot of helpers who barely or maybe not at all know how to swim, but they think they're going to be a lifeguard. And what they're doing is they can traffic in their own trauma. They can take their horror stories, the terrible things they've been exposed to, and can trot that out, which is very interesting and will get you speaking gigs and get you attention from people, which is not always very healthy. And they can put themselves in the position to be a helper, and they're really not there yet. They can be down the road perhaps, but right now with the current set of motivations and their current level of healthiness, they're not really in a good position to help others. They can barely keep themselves afloat. And so there's a lot of people that come into this space as chaplains or as public speakers or whatever. They write a book and they're not really in a place to help. And we need to have helpers who can help. Matt and I both, if you look at our ACEs score, our adverse childhood experiences score, we're both like zeros. Okay. We both had very healthy upbringings, great support around us. That's part of why we get along so great. We are not the walking wounded. And it's not that we've not experienced trauma. We both have. We've been through tough stuff. Matt's medical story is amazing and horrible and everything all at the same time. I've been through some terrible things myself, but overall, we're in a pretty good position to actually help people. And some people aren't yet. And I would pray that they would take time to do that first and get themselves squared away and make sure they've checked their motivations and whether they're really doing this out of love or out of a desire to be important or to be the expert or to be the center of attention or something like that. You need to make sure you have the right motivations. And so how do you find that? How do I go to IACP and write a policy for how every chaplain should be trained? You're not even going to get the right applicants at first. And of the applicants you get, there's only a tiny percentage that'll probably make an effective patrol chaplain. And can you teach the others to get there eventually? Maybe not. Or not. That's a hard thing to do. And so in my career, I'm a pastor at a church. There's some wackos out there that are pastors. There's some people who should never be put in front of an audience, who should never be given a platform to speak, should never lead or counsel or help others. They're train wrecks. They're dumpster fires. They shouldn't get to do it. And yet, even though the church has been around for 2,000 years, we still let those people slip through, and it gives everybody a bad reputation. So chaplains are in the same boat. How do you make good chaplains? How do you crank the crank and turn out of the chaplain making machine on the assembly line chaplains who are all equally effective and efficient and trustworthy? I don't know that you can. And so you start with people who are trustworthy. You give them decades of life experience. You fill them with love, and out of that you might get a good chaplain. But it's not as simple as hand the recipe around to 18,000 different law enforcement agencies and they all get the same result. So sorry to be overly bleak on that. I don't mean to be.
No, I don't think you are, and I think you're setting up for, okay, what do we do with that? And you're right. It's not simple. None of these things are. None of these tough grappling challenges are simple. They take a lot. And what it makes me think about is how you can translate what you just put out to any industry of value, right? Like, are there quacks that are doctors? I think that's where the word originated, like the term, right? Like, yes, like every type of doctor, MD, ND, PhD, they can just say whatever they're saying and do whatever they're doing. And then, like, where's the recourse? But at the same time, cops, teachers, counselors, politicians, judges, attorneys, right? Like, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly for everything and everyone. And like, how do we create more goodness? And you kind of said it without saying, but it's the intention. You can do what you can do, right? It's the circle of control that Matt talked about before we hopped on the recording, which is so simple and significant. It's complex when you put into play and integrate that into your life however you can. All we can do is influence. And I think that both of you and what I try to do, and certainly I've picked this up from so many people that really, really care, and they put out a lot of good stuff. And I'm not just saying like in content. I'm talking about in the work they do. People I've known personally that are off grid. They're not on the socials. They're not on the podcast. But it's leadership with true intention and care and investment and modeling. Right? It's not a quick scaling process. Right? You model fantastic chaplaincy. We're exposing it. We're trying to build more momentum and exposure for that through conversations like this. But in the old school and just where it's tried and true is you have a chaplain that does it a great way and engaging and loving, and they get to touch a couple other chaplains. They get to reach out, and all these first responders, they get to meet all these community members, and some of them are going to be chaplains one day, and others are going to be able to influence what a good chaplain looks like too. So I think that's super translatable to policing, to all these other things we're talking about.
Leadership, and we talked about this in other emails. If you study leadership, it's not rank or title, it's influence. So for all these different things, influence, how do we influence people the most? Actions speak louder than words. Role modeling, how you're living your life over the long term, not Bible thumping people, crossfitting, jujitsu, paleo, keto, carnivore, vegan. It's how you're living your life and how you make other people feel when you're around them. And that only comes through applying the basics with consistency, discipline, and passion over the long haul of your life, where it's not about you getting the helper's high, being the influencer, or getting attention as the chaplain or the retired cop train wreck that now wrote the book and how they screwed up their life. And then they did 5 EMDR sessions, rehab, a psychedelic trip, SGB shot. I could go on down the list of things that I actually believe in as tools in a longer process of a lifestyle. When you realize you've accepted the invitation to the second half of life, it's work for the rest of your life. There's the quote attributed to St. Francis, even though he really didn't say it: preach the gospel at all times. When absolutely necessary, use words. Go out and love on people with authenticity. And if you have genuine love for yourself, where you're comfortable enough to share that love with others by what I say, holding space and being present, that's how you're going to influence them as a supervisor, an academy instructor, a coach, a chaplain, a mental health therapist. And our culture's set up to be different because people want fast food online. I'm in pain. I have something going on. What's the quickest fast food I can get? It's cheap, it's fast and delicious, but it's not as nutritious as the grass-fed, pasture-raised steak that's going to cost twice as much. You're going to have to season it, leave it out at room temperature for a couple hours, then it's going to take 20 minutes to grill it. But it's going to have way more nutrition than the Big Mac. And so there's a lot of things going on in our culture that How do we teach people the awareness about pasture-raised, grass-fed and finished meat and all of these other healthier things that take a longer time, and it's really a commitment for the rest of your life? You get a big bench and abs, you cannot quit working out and eating strict. So there's no one rehab, medicine, EMDR, a couple sessions, Save a Warrior Boulder Crest, which I tell cops, apply to them, and Protectors Peak and Mighty Oaks. Those are all free retreats, but they will just be an introduction to you opening your heart, hopefully, to do work for the rest of your life, not be the mentor, the elder, or the author next year.
Yeah. I love that, Matt. And let's move our lives into this quality pasture raised, right? Grass fed, grass finished type of life and service and purpose. Right. So I love how that really sums up a lot of the quality that we're talking about and the meaningful change, kind of like just a few minutes back, we're talking about making meaning and these meaningful, I suppose, approaches to these really hard challenges. It's never easy, right? It's never an overnight. There's no quick fix, silver bullet. All right, Jared, where are you at as far as like bringing it all together and summarizing some of the thoughts? Because we covered a lot of great ground.
Yeah, summarizing what we've said. First of all, Matt does look like a Fed. That I'm not sure he's not a plant, but apparently he's not.
I don't know he's not. I don't factually know he's not.
And then what we were saying earlier about checking motivations. I come from a very evangelical background, and all I know in my religious life is telling others about Jesus, and that's all I know. But as a chaplain, I have to find a different way to do it. And I graded against that quote that's attributed to Francis of Assisi to, always preach the gospel, if necessary, use words. I said, no, you have to use words. You have to preach. You have to tell people directly. And what I found is that as a chaplain, where I was very limited about how much I could directly address, and I didn't have under Lemon versus Kurtzman, that's actually been replaced by Bremerton versus Kennedy. But regardless, under the court cases that were effective for decades and governed chaplaincy, I couldn't bring it up. I had to wait for them to bring up spiritual questions to me. And many times they didn't. Most 25-year-old cops aren't going to ask spiritual questions most of the time. And so I had to be patient and wait, and that was hard, but I've learned that I'm still effective in doing what my heart wants to do, to let people know that there's hope, that they are valuable, that even though the job breeds cynicism and can tear you down and can cost you terribly, that you are still worth it and you are still loved. That gets communicated without me having to preach at them. And so someday, Matt and I are all going to get to heaven with all of our officers and all the different flavors of religion. And we'll find out that I was right the whole time. And we'll have a good laugh about it. We'll have a good laugh about it, but it wasn't necessary for me to argue it down here at the police station.
Yeah. I love that.
I'll just say one quick thing, and we could have a whole episode of this. The experience of unconditional love, going back to what Jared talked about, that's what changes people's lives. Unconditional love. So even very religious people, sometimes I will ask, please share with me in your daily life where you experience the unconditional love of God, or tell me the most significant experiences in your life where you've experienced God through unconditional love. And I have hardcore Christians that'll be like, that's a hard question to answer. I got to get back to you. So beliefs are a good thing, but are you living out your beliefs, and are your beliefs grounded in an experience of love? And love is really how we change anyone, not just as a chaplain. That's our brothers and sisters in patrol, SWAT gang, NARC, detective unit, command staff, supervisors to subordinates. Love. And we may not use the word because in a police station, they're going to call you gay. But do your actions show love and authenticity and respect for others?
Yeah, it's so well said. And I think that just really drives home for a lot of the audience. Like, how do we bring that to our day-to-day work? Because that's why we signed up for this thing. That's why we should have signed up for this thing, is because care, compassion, love for our fellow man, for humanity. And like, this is the profession and the craft that you chose to put out that love. And sometimes it doesn't look like love, but that's the basis of it, right? That's the foundation. I love it. I mean, so much wisdom. I'll have to unpack this a couple times, like listening to it back. But I mean, off the cuff, a couple of things are like, how do we start with love? Say less, do more. See where your heart's at and where you come in at, where your intention's at, and you do the best you can through humility, modeling, and leadership. But I thank you both so much. I've gotten so much from this. I'm really excited to kind of go back through it and share this out when we get it all ready. So, Jared, and where can people find you? And please, like, give a quick second nod to your show.
Hey Chaplain, H-E-Y, heychaplain.com. It's a podcast, been out for several years, and it's an officer wellness podcast. It's not a Bible study. It's an officer wellness podcast. If you're a cop or you love a cop, this is the show for you.
Love it. All right, Matt.
TacticalChaplain.com and Tactical Chaplain and Thin Blue Line Spirituality on Instagram, and Matt Domyancic on LinkedIn.